Welcome to What's Your Personality Type? I'm Roberta Schwartz-Wennick, a registered dietitian and certified practitioner of the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, also known as the MBTI. Many years ago I was reading a book by Otto Kroger, a very well-respected leader in the MBTI world, where he discussed personality typing in business and industry for the purposes of career development, communication improvement, and team building. The book had nothing to do with health. While I was reading it, a light bulb went off in my head. You know, one of those aha moments? I saw personality typing as a perfect vehicle for helping people change their not-so-healthy lifestyle habits. I specialize in weight management. Too often people chase after the magic bullet, trying many different approaches to lose weight that are popular at the time. Often the approach just doesn't fit with their personality type, and so they must use willpower to see their way to the end of the program. Of course, too often willpower ends up in failure, as many of us know. We can't keep doing that which is not comfortable for our type, and so we end up going back to our old way of doing things. But just think, if you were shown a way that was comfortable for your type, it would be something you could do for the rest of your life. That's what living a healthy lifestyle is all about. So let me introduce you to personality typing for you to understand why losing weight based on your type can be so successful, because you'll be using the strengths of your type. There are 4 categories within type and 2 preferences for each category. As Carl Jung said when he first developed psychological type in the 1920s, you possess all of the preferences, but some of them you favor more than others. He also pointed out that while there are 2 preferences per category, you can't be doing them both at the same time. You'll tend to use that which is more natural for your type. One's type name consists of 4 letters, one from each of the 4 categories. That's why you'll see in this slide the first letter of each preference in a different color. For now, I just want to mention what the names of the preferences are, and then we'll go into more detail about each preference. The first category, what stimulates you or energizes you, consists of extroversion and introversion. While these 2 preferences contain attributes of the simple dictionary definition of the terms, they contain much more, which I'll be sharing in a moment. The second category, what you want to know, is to get at the kind of information you use to live your life, favoring either sensing or intuiting. The reason intuiting uses the letter N instead of the I is because the I had already been assigned to the term introversion. The third category, how you make decisions, consists of thinking and feeling. Just to mention here, your first thoughts may be, if I turn out to be a thinker, does that mean that I'm an unfeeling person? The answer is no. Remember, this category is just a matter of how you make decisions. The fourth and last category, the way you handle life, consists of judging and perceiving. If you turn out to be a judger, it doesn't mean you're judgmental. And if you turn out to be a perceiver, it doesn't necessarily mean you're overly perceptive. So what should you watch out for? Before I go into the details of personality typing, I want you to be very clear about some points regarding type. What it is, how it should be used, how it should not be used, etc. While your type name consists of 4 letters, and those will be your more favored preferences, it doesn't mean that you don't have traits from the letters that aren't showing in your name. You can use all of the preferences. In fact, the older you get, the more likely you'll be using those unnamed preferences. It's called wisdom. Personality typing is a great tool, but it's just that, a tool. It can't explain all of our behaviors because our life experiences also influence what we do and how we behave. Understanding that personality typing doesn't explain everything, it only makes sense that while you may know someone's type, you shouldn't box them in just because of your having knowledge of type. It is so important that you get a person's type correct before you start making assumptions about who they are and why they behave the way they do. That's why testing for type is so important. And then once someone has the results, having those results confirmed through conversation about type is also very important. So, what other things should you watch out for? Well, there are no good or bad types. It may just be that you admire someone else because some of the preferences they use most often are ones you wish you used more often, but aren't in your type name. The good news is that you can develop these. It's always funny to listen to people use type as an excuse for either doing something or not doing it. Sorry, that just doesn't work. We can change our actions even if we can't change our type. According to Carl Jung, we are born with our type. It's innate. As a child, we tend to only show our most favored preference. It's not until we're in our mid-20s that we're finally using most of our type to its fullest. Many people have taken the MBTI test at work. Too often they answer it according to who they have to be in the work environment. Many people are in jobs that aren't well suited for their type and will answer with a work mindset. When you take the test, you must answer according to how you are naturally. If you were to take the test when you are stressed out, you probably won't get a correct result either. When we're under stress, we're known to be on the shadow side of our type, acting according to the preferences that aren't in our type name. Type creates a bias in how we speak, how we listen, and how we respond. Of course, we don't even realize it. It's often the basis for why arguments happen. We're speaking in our personality type talk, while our listener is hearing it through their personality type hearing. It's why knowing someone's type can help so much in communication. It's called knowing where they're coming from. A couple of more things to watch out for. While the MBTI will produce a name for your type with 4 letters, it doesn't measure the amount of preference or ability to use that preference, especially for those people who score close to the middle on both preferences within a category. I believe that type can make you appreciate the gifts you have to offer, as well as what are the gifts of others. My husband, an INTJ, was originally an electronics engineer, a very logical and analytical man, and I truly admire him for that. I'm an ENFJ, and I lean more toward nurturing people. So I admire his analytical mind, and he admires my kindness and helpfulness. And what's really interesting is that over time we have helped each other build upon our less favored preferences. When I went to the University of Washington for my master's in nutrition, I had to take the entrance exams, and I scored highest on the analytical questions. My husband, in his later years, went back to school for a master's in counseling. So yes, the gifts we have and that of others are to be greatly appreciated. So, are you an extrovert or an introvert? Remember, these are the 2 preferences from the category what stimulates you or energizes you. So let's get started. Please understand that in this short slideshow there is only so much information I can share about personality typing. So while you may get an idea of what your type is from the slideshow, I highly recommend you're taking the free personality quiz I have on my site. Probably a good way to remember the difference between extroverts and introverts is that extroverts must live life to understand it, as compared to introverts who must understand life before living it. Think about these 2 statements because they underlie so much of what extroverts and introverts do. What I recommend you do is to take a piece of paper and create 2 columns. The first column heading should say extrovert and the second introvert. As we go through some of these statements about the preferences, put a tick mark in the appropriate column that applies to you. As I read these statements, it's not to say that they are 100% true for you 100% of the time. We're talking about generally speaking. So, are you normally outgoing, talkative, easy to know, or more reserved, quiet, and harder to know? Introverts don't tend to share a lot about themselves until they get to know you. Do you enjoy working in groups, or enjoy working alone with 1 or 2 others? Now remember to mark your paper. Do you tend to act first, then maybe reflect, or reflect first, then maybe act? Do you tend to express your emotions openly, or bottle up your emotions? I sometimes think that this is also somewhat gender related. Boys are taught not to cry, and I actually find it endearing to see a man crying, willing to share how he's truly feeling. Do you prefer experiencing a variety of things, or concentrating on just 1 or 2 things in depth? Do you tend to think out loud, or do you examine the facts first and then say what you're thinking? Keep in mind when you're meeting with introverts that they often have to examine things first before they'll tell you what they're thinking. So it's often easier for them to go away, think about it, and come back and have that conversation, whereas extroverts are actually using you as a sounding board. So, at this point, which of the preferences has the most tick marks? Extrovert or introvert? Circle it. Now on your paper with the 2 columns, put the headings as sensor and intuitive, and we'll do the same with the tick marks. Again, these 2 preferences have many attributes, but you can give an overriding comment about both of them. Sensors trust their five senses, whereas intuitives live by a sixth sense or their hunches. Keep that in mind as we go through some of the characteristics of these two preferences. Remember, these are the two preferences from the category What You Want to Know. What is more important to you? What is, also known as the present, or what might be, also known as the future? Remember to mark your paper. Do you prefer to be given facts and details, or the whole picture? Do you start at the beginning, taking a step-by-step approach, or do you tend to do things randomly? Do you like set procedures and established routines, or change in variety? Do you want things to be definite and measurable, or do you prefer an opportunity to be creative and inventive? Okay, now add up your tick marks and circle the preference with the most marks, either sensing or intuiting. Are you a thinker or a feeler? This time put the heading on your paper as thinker and feeler. Thinker and feeler are the preferences in the category how you make decisions. Realize that everything you do involves a decision. When the alarm rang this morning, you had to decide whether you were going to get up or push the snooze button. If you were tired last night, you would have to decide whether to skip the flossing of your teeth or not. That is, if you floss your teeth. You do floss your teeth, don't you? Anyway, for thinkers, life must make sense. Remember, thinkers are the analytical ones. Feelers, on the other hand, want life to feel good. Avoid arguments. Everyone should be happy. So, do you decide with your head or your heart? Remember, mark your paper. Which are you more concerned with? Truth and justice, or relationships and harmony? Do you make decisions logically and analytically, or based on personal values? Do you see things objectively, more as a spectator, or subjectively, more as a participant? Lastly, are you good at finding mistakes and being critical, or showing appreciation and giving praise? I do appreciate that everyone at one time or another may be critical or give praise. What we're talking about here is a general way of dealing with people. Now take a moment and add up your tick marks, circling the preference with the most marks. Are you a judger or a perceiver? Again, put headings on your paper as judger and perceiver. For judgers, life needs to be organized. Just ask my husband, who expects that if I use his tools, that each one will be put back in exactly the place I found it. For perceivers, life should be spontaneous. This is one of those times, as I was discussing earlier, where I wish I wasn't a judger. I would love to just do things on the spur of the moment, but it just isn't me. I'm working on it, though. Are you a planner who schedules events, keeps a list, and even puts something on a list just so you can check it off? Or are you flexible, adapting to events as they unfold? Somebody who seldom keeps a list or schedules. Just these two different aspects can make a world of difference in how you should go about making lifestyle changes. If you're a perceiver and someone asks you to keep a food diary, just know that you're going to have to use willpower to do it, and willpower will only last so long. My perspective is, why set yourself up for failure, trying to make changes in a way that isn't comfortable for your type? Do you tend to be goal-oriented or process-oriented? If you're goal-oriented, you might say, I want to lose 10 pounds this month. If you're process-oriented, you might say, I just love the way I get to eat on this diet approach. Do you complete projects on time by starting on time and working regularly, or rushing at the last minute? You know the type who finds a million other things to do besides the assigned project, or even studying for a test and then is up until all hours of the night trying to cram. Do you tend to finish one thing before starting the next, or have several things going at once? Do you make your decisions quickly, wanting closure, or more slowly, preferring to get more information? Do you feel more comfortable with being given limits and directions, or having freedom to explore without limits? Would you say you are organized and structured, or disorganized and messy? Once again, add up the columns and circle the preference with the most marks. You should now have a letter for each of the different categories. So write out what your personality type name is. You're either an E or an I, an S or an N, a T or an F, and a J or a P. This table gives you a quick view of the different preferences to better understand the type name you came up with. Just remember, take the personality quiz on my site, and if you just go back to the home page and click on free personality quiz, you'll have a clear picture of who you are. Again, let's just review it. For extroverts, they like to talk it out. Introverts like to think it through. Sensors like it's in the specifics, facts, and details. Intuitives like the big picture. Thinkers use logical implications, and feelers are concerned about the impact on people. Judgers have a joy of closure, and perceivers have a joy of processing. So, find your type name and see that there are 16 personality types within the MBTI. And it's interesting when you look at it because there are similarities. You can see that there are all of those P's, could have FP's, could have SFP's, but the introverts and the extrovert part of that type will make everything work a little bit differently. So, what's the next step? I hope you have a better understanding of type with this introduction to type. But there is so much more to learn about the strengths and challenges of your type if you want to make healthy changes. I highly recommend one of my books called A Diet for Every Personality Type, because not only will you learn more about your type, you'll learn about other types as well, and you'll learn what diets would work for your type, you'll learn what exercise program will be right for you to consider, and how you could handle stress in a more constructive way. On the other hand, if all you're interested is finding out about your type and having a diet plan, you might enjoy the book Your Personality Diet. So if you return back to my website, you can click on the links from the home page. It's been a pleasure sharing this information with you. Hopefully, your knowing your personality type will help you with attaining a healthier you.